Welcome to the SeizeYourBusiness.com podcast. My name is Kevin O'Flaherty from O'Flaherty Law. I'm joined today by Wendy Johnson from @Properties, and our topic today is going to be adapting in business. So thanks for being here today, Wendy.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
So tell me who you are and what you do.
Like you said, I'm Wendy Johnson with @Properties at this point. I'm a Downers Grove resident, born and raised here, so that's nice to have, to be in this community. I guess to just give you a little bit of background of who I am and how I started out, I went to school to go to teaching. I have a science background with an elementary education. My master's is in elementary education, and I did just that. I graduated from college and received my master's, and I went off to teaching. And at that point, looking back, I just didn't. You just don't realize who you are, or I didn't at least at that point, or what really I was looking for. I thought that the job and the career path fit my needs. I will be honest with you, I'm a teacher at heart. I enjoy that, but just not in the capacity that I thought now that, I've expanded my career.
I bet you get to apply a lot of the same principles in teaching people about real estate.
Absolutely, absolutely. So sometimes it's at face value of a teacher, what people think, but in that aspect, it's really kind of dwelled into helping others and educating and, helping in that way. So, I make a long story short, I went off, I got my first teaching job. It's harder than you think. With teaching, you don't realize that they hire in a short window, and so you kind of just take whatever you can. And my first teaching job, I was living here in Downers, was way out in Elgin, and it just was what was available and what I could get. So at that point, but little unbeknownst to me, it really turned out great. I fell into a school that was doing a full-time kindergarten, and they paid for me to go get training in order to open this full-time kindergarten. And then, so with that knowledge, I opened that kindergarten with my colleague and stayed there for about 2 years. And then I took that and I opened several other full-time kindergartens throughout the area. And I ended actually at Avery Cooley here in Downers Grove.
Well, that's a good school.
It was great. It was great. A different atmosphere, and so that was really intriguing, and it sounds really cool. But the hard part with that was that I was being paid no more than I was a new teacher at that point. Mm-hmm. I had taught for a total of 6 years when I went to Avery Cooley, and you literally are handed a sheet that shows you day 1 to year 20. Type of thing, and it's a slide scale, and it doesn't deviate. And so
you wanted to have some sort of control over how much you're paid based on the amount of effort you expended and the experience that you gained.
Absolutely. And I'm going to be honest with you, I just was really naive, and I just didn't realize that was part of the job, that, being young, and I didn't realize that was the importance that I was going to put. But I soon discovered that my entrepreneurial spirit didn't agree with that slide scale. And it was hard. You were teaching next to veterans who had been there for 20 years. And yeah, they put the time in. But in my eyes, they weren't doing any better of a job or more of a quality. And there was no way that whatever you put in, you weren't getting out. And I really needed that. Personally, in my life, I had 2 children at that point. And we found out we were pregnant. And I thought we were going for what I always call the new 2, 3. Unbeknownst to me, we were having baby number 3 and 4. So our family was doubling in one swell swoop. And then again, I was struggling with the structure of the career I had chosen at that point. The real estate market was booming. I had a new sister-in-law that worked for @Properties, and she's like, "Wendy, come help me." And I was like, you know what? This is up. And, you and I talked about this. This is one of the things that we relate to. If something's not working in my life, I change it.
Sure.
I don't just keep beating it. And I think there's someone called that's insanity. And that's exactly how I see it.
Yeah, doing the same thing and expecting a different result.
Absolutely. And so I just was like, you know what? This is okay. I'm gonna cut my losses here and just try something new. And that's exactly what I did. So before I was pregnant with my twins, I jumped into real estate. I finished out my last year at Avery Cooley and passed the test, and away I went with real estate.
What was that transition like to go from, taking a salary that was stable, but, there was a ceiling on it, to having, the world be your oyster, but not having any stability?
Well, I always laugh when I tell everyone this, because at that point I was making $27,000 teaching. which is pretty standard that early on in the teaching career. And I laughed and I said, well, I can't make any less. I didn't see, I always look at pros and cons and weigh them out. And I thought, well, I can't make any less. Oh, yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. And yes, I did. So that was a hard transition. It was something unexpected. Real estate was a harder battle to get into at the time. Even though the market at that time was booming, I was too new to feel that.
Sure.
So, once again, though, I have to say the theme is, I was like, well, okay, this isn't working. I need to try this. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly how I, perceived it. And then 2008 rolled around and no one knew exactly what was occurring, but the market was just crumbling underneath us. So from that 2006 to 2008, I was really too new to feel the push. And then the market just literally collapsed underneath us.
And how did you react and adapt in 2008 when that happened?
Same thing. Okay, this isn't working. Let's try this. I had fallen into a niche with that properties that people were still having babies. I figured out they were still having babies, they were still getting married, no matter what the recession looked like, and they were still moving from the city to the suburbs. And so I focused my business heavily on buyers, which I'm going to be honest with you is not really the best way to support a real estate business, but at the time it worked. And
because real estate agents make less money off of buyers.
It's just more time consuming, to be honest with you. And we don't get paid till the end of the transaction. So the model really, you want to be heavy sellers versus buyers as far as to create. It also creates stability. But in the market, there was no stability anyway, so it didn't matter. You know what I mean? And I looked at it as a point to kind of tread water. It was great, though. A lot of realtors were fluxing out of the business. And those of us that they reassured that if you would stand steady and steadfast, that your efforts would pay off.
And so there was less competition, even though there was less volume.
There was.
I bet once the market picked up, you were really poised to take advantage of that lower.
Absolutely. And so to my advantage, I have to say, was because I didn't know what it felt like before, I was able to adapt quickly. And I actually think that was an advantage over those that had more time and tenure into the career.
So you started with a lean model and not expecting everything to come easy to you. Yeah. So I'm sure once it started coming a little easier, it was gravy.
Absolutely, and that's exactly, and it was easier to kind of build upon that and not be entrenched in that. But I think that's kind of what we're talking about today is if something's not working, give it a go, give it another chance. Everyone always talks about their successes, and we see people and idolize and look at what they've done. But I think we always forget where they've come from and all the things they've gone through to get to that point.
Sure.
And I think that's important to focus
That's been a reoccurring theme on our podcast. Our first episode was called Fail Faster, and we've had a lot of entrepreneurs tell us, you just have to confront failure and not let it end you, but figure out what you did wrong and adapt and change and acknowledge that what you're doing isn't the right thing as early as you can.
Absolutely. And unfortunately, even through real estate, I hate to say it, but the mistakes or the failures that's where you take the biggest strides forward to learn versus, the things that come easy or that what looks like a success on the outside, that's not where I've learned from. It's those,
It's kind of the old saying, the good is the enemy of the great. If you're cruising along and doing, passably well, but not really great, you don't have a lot of motivation to really evaluate what you're doing and change it.
Absolutely. I think that's, and out of that necessity, it bred, my desire to succeed. So with that, at the time, my husband was an excavator, and that market just completely, it was new construction, and that completely crumbled without us. So I became the breadwinner, where I was really a secondary. I had always been a secondary, as far as our financials go. He was supporting us. And then when that collapsed underneath us, this was my job and I needed to step up to the plate. And honestly, though, I'm grateful for that because that really, it pushed me along, and like what you talked about, good's an evil place because good makes it's easy to settle in there and never get to great.
Sure.
So I think that
must have been really tough for you guys because you were both in real estate focused careers that when the real estate market tanked, It wasn't like your incomes were diversified over different things.
No.
How did you deal with that mentally and emotionally? How did you guys handle going through that?
You know what? I think it was just, again, out of necessity. I truly just don't give up.
Mm-hmm.
I credit that a lot to my mom and dad, to be honest with you. I laugh. I don't know that they think this is funny, but I always say I was raised by hippies.
Oh yeah.
And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. That I mean that in an innovative way. They always did things, for themselves, and they didn't rely on others and that type of thing. And so that was something that I was brought up doing, and it was okay to step up and be like, okay, this is what we need to do. Okay. So I have to say that I always look at things not as the challenges, but look for those solutions.
So it sounds like you didn't let fear paralyze you at that point.
No, that's one of the great parts about my job. I have to say, I tell people all the time I have the best job ever. There's very few jobs in this world that I can set a goal and go after it. Mm-hmm. So many people are, bound by their salary or what the ceiling looks like, and there's truly no ceiling on my job, and I knew that. And now the great part, the yin and yang versus the teaching, the more I put in, the more I got out. And I felt that early on.
So even when you were struggling in the first couple of years and knew, you were still feeling the payoff from your effort and getting some satisfaction out of that?
Absolutely. And like what you said, it did kind of snowball on itself. Once you got a little bit of momentum in there, I was able to, play off of that, and it snowballed off of that. So, and then about 7 years ago, so I've been doing real estate for 9. I would say actually probably 6 years ago, my partner at the time, who was my sister-in-law, with everything, with the economy and everything, they chose for their family, the best suit was to pick their family up and move back to her home in Kentucky, where she was born and raised. So they did that. And so then I was without a partner.
Yeah, and a mentor too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And she was a great mentor. She taught me a lot. And because that's the hard part about real estate, is you pass a test and then they just throw you into it. Sure. There's no, you know what I'm saying? So you really do need to seek out that education piece and that mentorship, and she did a great job of that. And I credit a lot of my success to her early, teachings with that. So they picked up and moved, and I was doing about 50% in the city and 50% in the suburbs. Okay. At that point, we had a listing on Ashland, and you show your property in the city, which is hard, but she was compensating a lot of that. And so that was one of the biggest changes that I felt. I was showing a property on Ashland. I'll never forget it. And it took me an hour and a half to get down there, because remember, I lived in Downers Grove. I was driving to the city. It took me an hour and a half. They were 20 minutes late, and the agent called and said they weren't coming.
So you've just burned like 3.5 hours of your time, basically.
For nothing. Just standing. I just remember standing in the middle of Ashland, and I thought to myself, I will never do this again. And at that point, once again, that reoccurring theme, this isn't working. Sure. I got to change something. And so I did. I took all of my business, and I only was selling then in the western suburbs. At Properties did something that they normally don't do. They allowed me actually to join a team at that point. Okay. And I joined Joe Zimmerman and Mary Haight, which was MKT.
Okay.
So I joined that team at that point. It just doesn't make sense with the model. You kind of could create monopolies within the company. But I think I'll be honest, the stars and moon aligned, and I think with the economy, what it was, and my situation, losing my partner and stuff, they just, I don't know, maybe they felt bad. I don't know, but it worked for me.
Okay.
So I joined them, and again, I gained that mentorship.
And we talked when we had lunch. Was it yesterday that we had lunch, or
we did?
Okay. Sometimes the days blur together. We talked about at that point you started turning people away, turning types of clients away to say I'm looking only for suburban clients, and that that was a big step for you, right?
It was a big step, and you and I talked about that. The best example was even just defining expectations. I just learned that if you set out expectations for people, they understand what you expect out of them and what they can expect out of you. And it really propelled my business at that point, was just laying that out. And one of the things that I did that I think is scary to some realtors is you and I talked about this, I don't work on Sundays. Mm-hmm.
That's a bold move for a realtor.
It is, just because so many, everyone thinks, the weekend, with everyone's time. I knew the service I was providing, I was doing more than opening doors. And if you were looking for someone just to open the door, then I wasn't the right person for you.
Sure.
And I have to say that Joe and Mary really helped me define that avenue of, providing value, showing value, and sticking with that model and being true to yourself. So that helped immensely. And I would just explain to people right off the bat, I'm available from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Saturday. And then you and I talked about rules are always meant to be broken.
Sure.
If you need me and I'm negotiating something, if time is of the essence, of course you have me on the Sunday, but.
So it sounds like a lot of the adapting that you did in your career was kind of understanding your own value and the value of your time and maximizing that time and treating yourself, believing in yourself and not being afraid to make those changes.
Absolutely. I would agree with that. And it's kind of, when we talk about adapting, and I don't want to give the wrong perception that I'm like a squirrel, like, you know what I'm saying? Just change this, change this. Oh, this is a better idea. Let's do this. But you just have to weigh out and know who you are and where you're going and stick with that, and I think the soul that comes down to it is believing in yourself and what you provide.
Then that's, when your back's against the wall, that's sometimes the last thing that you have is your belief in yourself. And that's what stops you from going and getting a job somewhere, in a salaried position and giving up. I'm not going to give up. I'm going to change direction, evaluate what's going wrong and fix it. And I believe that if I do that, I'll be successful. Every business owner has to have that at their core if they want to be successful, I think.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, is just knowing where you're going in essence and sticking with that. And that's when you're a new agent and I'm mentoring those new agents, they're so hungry for business, and I get it. You and I was there and did that. I would take anything and everything type of thing. And it's the worst mistake you could make. And so I really, if it's the one thing that I can tell people, is to give them those guidelines and those parameters and set them early. And it just, I probably would have saved years, of instead of kind of chasing after.
So even when business was hard to come by for you, you would have specialized a little bit more. I
would have. If I could change, if I could look back and change something, which I'm going to be honest isn't my personality, I really look forward.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? I rarely look back. It doesn't service you.
Sure.
And so if I could, though, that would be something I would change. Was I would have been more defined early on versus kind of chasing after anything.
What are some of the other hard lessons you've learned in the course of your career? Nuggets of wisdom that you could pass on from your experience?
Well, I think that knowing who you are, I think that's not allowing others to, being honest and open with people. Being okay with who you are. I think, and we talked about this yesterday also, at the beginning of my career, I would say, I'm a crazy realtor. And, shame on me. Shame on me for ever labeling myself as a crazy realtor. I have the best job ever, and we talked about this, to be able to, go after a goal, literally set my income and go after it, is an unbelievable opportunity. And the service I provide for people, it is, in the beginning, you gotta fake it till you make it. Be confident in yourself. You've got something. I always, I think one bit of advice to always keep in mind is no one is born anything.
That's a good point.
You're not born an attorney. I wasn't born a realtor. Those people that have made it, they weren't born anything. They achieved those just by hard work and perseverance. And the thing, I think the other piece of wisdom that I always take with me and I try to pass on to others is do things differently. Be an out-of-the-box thinker.
What are some examples of how you've done that?
Well, I think that being extremely creative is the one thing that I really pride myself on. So, especially with deals, when they look like they're tanking, again, sometimes you can't just keep chasing after something, but I always make sure that I try till the end. I try to be as creative as possible for a win-win situation type of thing. And I think that that's really helped, especially through those lean years, not just walking away from things that looked like they were tanking. Yeah. I found 9 times out of 10 we could salvage them just by being creative and taking a step back, putting your ego aside, and really looking at what was best for the client type of thing.
My mom always used to quote Einstein. I think there's an Einstein quote, creativity is more important than knowledge. And
Absolutely.
it's definitely true in the law, for sure.
Absolutely.
Being flexible, a flexible thinker has so much more to do with being successful for your clients than what you've got already memorized in the back of your head.
Absolutely, and especially as you talked about, kind of in those lean financial years for myself, that creativity, I would have given everything up just to hold on to that. I think it's really serviced me well. And back to my mom and dad, I think they were creative. They were creative thinkers. They were
Part
out
of
of
that
the box.
hippie thing.
Part of that hippie thing. I think that served just well, and that and they've really taught me to be that person, and it's okay to possibly go against the norm, and that's what I'm finding. I do a lot of reading, and those that are truly successful and that are above and beyond, those that we look up to, really just took a different path.
Do you have any business books that you read?
Yes.
Any you can recommend?
My favorite one right now is The One Thing.
I haven't heard of that one.
It's phenomenal. It's
What's the thesis?
So it's by Gary Keller, who owns Keller Williams, and it talks about the 80-20 rule.
Okay.
That's the premise of it, and it's focusing. It's blocking everything else out so that you can focus on what's important. And especially in my business, realtors confuse what the business end and the job end is. So my business is to lead generate. Mm-hmm. The job is to sell a home. So unless you have to keep lead generating in order to propel the financials.
Sure.
Otherwise, it causes those peaks and valleys that a lot of realtors suffer from.
Well, in any industry, you need a balance of both the job and the business.
Absolutely.
And if you're doing too much of the business and not enough of the job, you're in trouble. And if you're just working busy as heck and too busy for business development, there's going to come a time you're not that busy.
Absolutely. And even though that book was written by a realtor, it honestly is truly a book for anybody. It's just focusing on what's important and truly what is going to get you to your goals, whether it's profit or whatever that goal looks like. It's just we get bogged down in so many little innuendos throughout the day, especially now with technology. Think about how many times I'll pick up my phone and before I know it, I'm on Facebook and it's not servicing me.
Sure.
And then I'm like, it's been a half hour and I haven't done anything. It's very distracting. We have so many things coming at us, and it allows you every day. The methodology behind it is just to remind yourself, what are your goals? Where are you going towards? And what do you need to focus on that day to make it productive?
Well, if someone wants to reach you to buy or sell a home, how can they do that?
They can either contact me by phone or by email. I'm wjohnson@atproperties.com.
You're welcome to give out your phone number.
My phone number is 630-514-6615.
Great job today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.